Hello, welcome to today's episode of Juicing the Numbers, your statistics and sports podcast. I am among your hosts, Joshua Tracy.
I'm also amongst them, Corwin Heller.
And Josh's hat today is a new acquisition. It is the Negro League's centennial hat. I have the shirt of this. Oh, there's the hat. Great hat. Brand new hat. Loving this hat.
Josh, you wearing a hat today?
Every day, man. I wear my hats You'll never see my hair if you're watching these videos. I might be bald. You have no idea. Um,
I've actually never seen Josh's hair.
never. I was born with a hat.
That's a falsity, but it's not terribly far from the truth.
Love my hats. Plus, and again, I needed an excuse to go through all these fucking hats. I have so many goddamn hats. Anyway, welcome to the show today. Recording this on February 28th, coming out on March 1st, which means spring training baseball is back today at 1, which is right about when we're recording this. The Yankees are playing the Blue Jays in a spring training game, and wow, does it feel nice and weird and surreal that baseball is back. Corwin, do you have any intention on watching spring training baseball today?
Yeah, I actually have the page up right now. I'm trying to decide between Brewers, White Sox, Angels, Giants, Dodgers, Athletics, Nationals, Cardinals, or Blue Jays, Yankees. I realized only two of those, only Cardinals, Nationals, Yankees, Blue Jays are actually at 1. The rest are at 3, but I'll watch those 1 o'clock games. I'll probably watch the Yankees just to, yeah. Not gonna watch the Cardinals, that's for sure.
Yeah. It is it's weird that it's so normal. It's so weird that so far as I can tell from a fan perspective, it's happening like it always does. They're letting fans in the stands because it's Florida and there's no rules. Which is evident. And they're going to be doing the thing. There's never usually a lot of exterior people there. A lot of usually the people who are there are your beat reporters and then your staff. That's kind of it. It's not like there's usually a lot of extemporaneous folks just kind of like meandering about, which makes the fact that it's just happening during still a COVID time probably work out for the best because there's just not a lot of people around. But it's still like weird that it's just how it usually. I remember so distinctly last year shit getting shut down during spring training, and like reporters asking the athletes during media sessions like, hey, how you feeling about all this COVID talk? Then you heard athletes like Giancarlo Stanton being like, "Oh, I'm definitely washing my hands more. It's definitely scary." And then like a few weeks later, shut down city. And we entered into all the talk about what happens next in terms of the MLB season, and instead, this really has a chance to be 2021's first true taste of normalcy. MLB around a lot of states and cities in the US is already selling tickets to the games. You can buy tickets to Yankees games today in New York for April. Mets tickets you can buy today for in Queens in April. And with the vaccine rollout being what it is, it seemingly is working. I am your boy right here, 2 parts vaccinated. I am set to go and start licking doorknobs and kissing strangers.
Back to how we were before the pandemic. All right.
Yeah, it's my lifestyle just a mere 18 months ago.
Josh is the kind of guy when we would go to Yankees games, he would pick the gum off the underneath of the bleachers and just chew on it for good luck.
Man, that's free gum. You can't turn that down. Pre-seasoned gum. Uh
Actually had a friend who got cold called last week by a guy looking to sell him some Flyers season tickets.
wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to look at Gritty 40 times a year.
Oh, I mean, shit, I look at Gritty every night. Just pull up the old Pornhub, search for some Gritty, and hey, I got myself a night.
Yeah, yeah, a regular occurrence for you. Um, fuck, what was I saying? Oh, yeah.
I
So
don't know.
there's a decent chance that, like, this MLB season will be that first big ceremonial return to normalcy. Like, I don't think we're going to see an opening day parade in Cincinnati the way that we typically would in the last 150 years of baseball history. I'm sure the town might do something just because it's such a thing for Cincy, but I doubt it'll be the same attendance and structure that it normally is. But outside of that, I mean, it's going to be a full season, and it's going to have fans in the stands, and it might look fucking normal, which is nice and odd.
I still have so many reservations that I like. We had this talk this time last year. We are in, the exact same boat of like, I just don't trust MLB to get it done. I'm scared now that we're at a point where this is now the new normal. And I think people are going to have their guards down and just think, it'll be fine. It'll work out. No big deal. And I could see it getting pretty ugly. But they proved me wrong last year. Hopefully, they prove me wrong again this year.
For anyone wondering why Corwin got very quiet and you heard a bunch of ruffling, it's because he just tucked his microphone into his shirt to have a hands-free
Did you really
microphone
hear a
setup.
lot of that ruffling? Because I didn't hear
So
it.
much.
Yeah. Really? Oh shit! I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay, buddy. It's okay. So if you're watching the video of this on YouTube, there is Corwin standing there. Hold up both hands, Corwin. There you go. Yep. Hands-free, microphone tucked in shirt setup. Oh, gotta love it.
I don't have, the luxury of having a full mic stand like Josh has with his fancy new mic. So
That's
I gotta
right,
get
bitch.
creative with it.
You're
You're
not
don't
even
even have
working
a
on a
desk or a
desk. Yeah.
chair. I'm just laying in bed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
fuck.
know.
Listen,
Anyway.
we can't all be winners.
No, but we can all be losers if we just don't try. Uh so
Listen, story of my life.
oh, of course, buddy. It's the American dream.
Oh, sad. So
Uh
sad.
yeah, but in a really fun and depressing way. So
Again,
let's
story
talk
of
a
my
little
life.
bit about some baseball-y topics. And one of the things that I've been sitting on for a little bit, this isn't going to be a very detailed analysis because I kind of wasn't really sure what I was looking to get out of it, as I was just kind of like free form thinking, very Jack Kerouac, but in all the good ways, not the bad ways, which is most of the Jack Kerouac ways. But
I don't
uh,
know who that is.
famous American poet Jack Kerouac.
Oh, right. You forgot. I don't know how to read. So,
That's true. He was a good friend of Allen Ginsberg.
oh, Allen Ginsberg. I actually do know Allen Ginsberg.
The beat poet, wrote Howl.
Howell. I know Sam Howell, quarterback for North Carolina, but
That sums up who
that's all I
Corwin
got.
is. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
right.
right. It's my very literate friend, Corwin Heller.
Corwin Heller do words good. Yeah.
Um. Anyway, I the reference to Jack Kerouac being that he was known for putting in you know what, it doesn't matter, I'm not getting into that. This is a free form thinking concept. So what I wanted to look at was, if we instituted a salary floor,
Mm-hmm.
where that money would kind of go. And that's a tough question to ask because, I mean, well, goddamn, it could go so many different places. So I wanted to look at a numbersy breakdown, and it's not going to quite. I'll get into it. So the total sum of 2021 payroll between all 30 teams as it stands right now. This is data I pulled today, February 28th, off of Spot Track, which again, can't shout out highly enough. Love Spot Track. Totals $3.5 billion of payroll. All right, $3,558,211,078 to be precise.
How much of that is the Pirates?
Oh, you want to be sad today?
Like less than 1%?
Oh, by percentage, well, let's find out. As a percentage, the Pirates are 1.17%.
Oh, so close.
Genuinely so close to being less than, sadly close to being less than 1% of that.
Man, if only there were 100 teams in MLB, that would be impressive.
Yeah, actually, for reference, how much do you think the most payrolled team, the Dodgers, are as a percentage?
If the Pirates are at 1.17, I would say like 5%, 6% in that range.
6.7.
There we go. That's even higher than I thought.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. All right,
Hey, it makes the Pirates look worse, so I can't complain.
this is true. So, in thinking of a salary floor, where would you personally want to see that number be?
It's hard because, something like 50 million would be, higher than the lowest team in baseball, obviously, but I don't think that would be nearly high enough to really be implemented and to be effective in what their goal would be, and ensuring teams are trying to put a competitive product on the field. 100 million is probably a little high for, I think that would create a lot of, I think there would be issues with $100 million floor, just because, at the end of the day, there are teams that just cannot afford that. No, that's just me falling into their excuses. $100 million is where I'd want it. I don't think the "oh, we can't afford it" excuse really holds much water. I think we all, both of us agree with that. Obviously, if there's deeper circumstances and exceptions to dig into, that could be decided, but off the cuff, I don't see why it should be under 100 million.
So, this in of itself, I think, is an interesting question because, not a lot of. So, the sport I always come back to when I think of salary floor is the NHL, because I know that they have a salary floor, and I know what it is. And just to pull it up in front of me,
Thank you.
the NHL salary floor is $60.2 million. The NHL salary cap is $81.5 million, which means that their floor is 73.86% of their salary cap. Okay. Which, if you applied that, if we assume that the luxury tax threshold is the de facto salary cap, that means that the MLB salary floor would be $153 million.
Wow. So 5 times the current payroll of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Almost 6. Yeah.
What's the Pirates?
No, sorry. Almost, no, 4, almost 5. I had to do the
right. Okay.
My bad.
I was like, I didn't think they were that bad. Holy shit.
Yeah, they're not. I just massively discounted the Pirates.
Okay.
Which, like, they deserve, but I'm still wrong.
Oh, wholeheartedly, yeah.
In the NBA, let's do some quick math on this bitch. In the NBA, the minimum.
I have a daily alarm that every single day I forget that I set one, and it fucking scares the shit out of me every day. Because I'm usually at work too. Oh, fuck. I'm so sorry. I'm
It's
very
okay.
unprofessional today.
So in the NBA, the minimum team salary, and this is for the 2019-2020 season, the minimum NBA salary was $98.226 million, and the maximum, the salary cap, was $109.14 million, and that means that the salary floor was 90% up to the salary cap, and if you
That's
take that,
crazy.
yeah, granted, significantly fewer players,
Right.
so that margin, that difference is, one player. Depending on how much, no, that doesn't breach max contract. So or several depth pieces, depending on how much you pay them, doesn't matter. If you take that and apply that quantity to the MLB, which it's $187 million, which obviously wouldn't happen. And to that point, I would argue maybe shouldn't happen, just because that seems to be, I think that would be,
That would be insane.
that would probably be too
That
high.
that honestly, I think if they did push that and they did, work to implement that high of a salary floor, that would give so much leeway for teams to severely fuck over all of those minor league players, because now all of these small market teams have genuine, honest to God excuses for, hey, we can't afford to pay these guys because look at how much money we have to pay all these major leaguers.
Right. Exactly. And honestly, one of the other things I was thinking of is, 150 million, which was the number we had said previously. That would be a higher payroll than, let's see, 21 out of the 30 teams in MLB as of today.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So
Which is just not feasible in any conceivable way.
not at least not in an immediate fashion. Just because I don't think teams would know. Not that they wouldn't know. I don't think that they would do that spending responsibly.
No.
In any meaningful fashion. It might lead to some negative consequences. Overpaying of players, which I'm not saying we should worry about how much players are getting paid, but more so the standard that we're setting for future players to get paid. It might lead to some weird negotiation stuff just down the road, and arbitration might get weird. You want it to be sustainable for the players so that they can institute growth properly and not have the quantities come back to fuck them at some later date due to weird circumstantial bits and pieces of history.
Right. It would lead to extremely lopsided teams and contracts where, nobody wants to be paying, I don't know, who's a random fucking player, just,
Ender and Ciarte.
Sure, like back end of the roster kind of guys, large amount of money just to make up for the fact that, they need to fill out their payroll. I think it would end up with those lesser tier guys making a little bit more, and then the top name guys getting major increases in salary to kind of make up for that.
Now, let's look at a few other different benchmarks. So if we set the salary floor to $50 million, that only would affect 4 teams as of today. The Marlins, Orioles, Pirates, and Indians. Those are the only teams that fall below $50 million. So to that effect, I would say it's not quite effective enough. If we set it to $75 million, then we get an extra 3 teams. We go up to 7 teams. Now roped into that are the Detroit Tigers, Seattle Mariners, and the Tampa Bay Rays. But if we set it to $100 million, now we have 12 teams. So still less than half the league, but a pretty decent number of teams that would have to come up. And you get in there the Brewers, the Rangers, the A's, the Royals, and the Diamondbacks. So I'd say probably somewhere between 75 and 100, with either of those being, somewhere within or equal to 75 and 100 would probably be where I'd be.
I think, splitting the difference, like setting it at 80, 85 would be ideal. I don't want to come in. I want to make the game more fair. I want to, increase the parity in baseball like we have in the NFL, that we have in hockey. I don't want to completely fundamentally change how baseball teams are constructed. I don't want to turn the league over on its head for 5 seasons, 6 seasons while teams figure this shit out. I think, having 10 teams affected is fine. I think having 15, 20 teams affected is way, way too high for what we're trying to accomplish with this.
And I think there should be penalties because I think everybody, maybe not every single body, but I think most of us would agree that a hard cap for the MLB probably not the best idea because we want to encourage teams to spend money. And in the
Right.
MLB, there isn't necessarily as clear cut of a linear progression between spending and results.
Mm-hmm.
For example, coming into the season, the Boston Red Sox will have the seventh highest payroll in all of baseball. Solid chance the Boston Red Sox don't come away with a top 10 record in baseball.
I would go out and go as far as to say I would put significant money that they don't come close to a top 10 record in baseball this year. Terrible sentence. I'm sorry.
It worked effectively enough. So, because if you're telling me that part of why the Rays don't spend money, in addition to them being bad or being poorly attended, is that they don't need to spend money because of the analytics aspect of it, fine. If you have finish, because for me, stuff like high draft picks, which I guess is kind of the only thing the MLB really can do because you can't trade draft picks in the MLB. The idea of getting the high draft pick is because you're bad. So in theory, if you are winning a bunch of games like the Rays are, then fuck your draft. If you spend above the salary, why is that the line for losing draft picks is spending money and not spending money? Because if I'm the Rays and I'm consistently spending under $60 million on players and also winning at the same time, why the fuck do I need draft picks? So if we're going to have a salary floor and we want to make it a soft salary floor, like we have a soft cap with the luxury tax, institute similar punishments. If teams, because if you are the Orioles and maybe you don't have as good of an analytics department as the Rays, well, then maybe I'm going to spend the extra money because I don't know how to get the most out of my players, or I don't know how to get the right players. And I'm going to try to do something to keep, to preserve my picks or whatever, or to maintain revenue sharing. Because that's the other part of it is if the Rays aren't feeling as though they just need the analytics and they don't need the money part of it. Well, part of going over the luxury tax threshold is an increase in the revenue sharing. So you lose additional money that gets put into a pool that lower revenue MLB teams then get to collect from. So if you go below the salary floor, you should lose some percentage of that money relatively equivalent to what you have to give if you go above the luxury tax threshold. And you should probably lose out on draft picks because either you're going to make the calculation of what makes more sense for me, spending an extra however $1 million per year that I need to do to avoid these consequences, the same way that teams at the top end have to do to avoid facing those consequences by spending too much money. Or you're going to decide, I'm good. I've got the best analytics department in the country. We've got the best scouts in the country. We've got the best international scouting program in the world. Fuck that shit. I don't need your goddamn money, and I don't need these dumb draft picks. I'm just going to go sign a bunch of underprivileged Hispanic kids from Venezuela who don't know that $5 doesn't mean that much. That's right.
Hey, the
MLB is
American
shady as
way.
shit. That's right. The American business dream. And you know what? If that's their choice, let them do it. Because why should the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Red Sox have to sponsor the Rays while all of those teams face consequences, and the Rays can just choose to not contribute to the salary of MLB players at all and just like vibe?
Exactly. It really comes down to, we in this country just take too much from the teams that have the most money. They work hard for all that money. They are in the same circumstances as all the other teams. We should tax them less. Sorry, we should allow them to make more money. No, wait, sorry. I'm losing my point here. I think we should let the rich people just keep all the money and just let the poor people choose to be poor. Yes.
Beautiful point, my friend.
I do what I can here. I do what I can. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and the other thing that I chew on a lot is
Tobacco.
No, God, yeah. It is the idea that all the owners can't afford it. All right, don't let them own a team then.
Yeah.
Like,
if you are not wealthy enough to run a team, don't run a team.
And like that's the other thing about it. It's like, and we touch on modern politics every now and then on the show, and I'm going to get into it. But the idea, right now being debated is the $15 minimum wage and how that would put out some small businesses. And it's like, I'm sorry, but if that small of an increase, because not nobody, but most states have like above $7 minimum wages on their own. So it's probably somewhere between $8 and $10 for most states. Jersey is working up towards a $15 minimum wage right now anyway. And if that difference between payroll for a business that employs like 6 people is just going to put you under, chances are your business ain't doing that fucking great anyway. If
right,
that's
like
what it was going to put you under, fuck you. You're not running a good business.
Like if the defining, foundational piece of capitalism is, hey, only the strong survive, you have to earn yours, you can't just take what you need, blah, 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 you got to earn it. Well, if your company isn't capable of earning it because you can't afford to pay your employees, you can't, your margins aren't good enough, well, then there you go. You are incapable of running a business. You shouldn't run a business. There shouldn't be an argument there. But again, we don't need to focus on politics here.
Right, but we don't need to focus on the political aspect of it. But
That's
I
what
think
our
the same
new podcast is for, juicing the Constitution.
Ring that bitch out. But the same logic applies here to ownership. If the idea of spending $75 million a year in payroll is too rich of a concept for you, maybe just don't own if no one's forcing you to own a baseball team. Nobody's, and guess what? There's so many billionaires in the country. I'm willing to bet half of them would want to own teams because it's a status symbol. That's the whole reason.
A really great investment.
Yeah. First off, it's one of the few. It's like a fucking bond. It always goes up. It makes no sense. And what's that guy who owned the Clippers that had to sell them because he was a racist man?
Oh yeah, Roger Sterling.
Yeah, Roger Sterling. The whole reason he bought the Clippers was because a guy he knew bought the Lakers and was like, "Yo, Roger, you should buy a team. It's awesome, man." And then he bought a team. Yeah.
I thought it was because he was just super racist and wanted to own "quote unquote" black people, but
no. Apparently, the dude who bought the Lakers was like an old protege of his, and
really
was getting, and because he bought the Lakers, they were in Los Angeles, and Roger Sterling was like an LA guy. He was an LA real estate guy. He was getting really fucking annoyed that this dude he knew who was younger than him was like beloved around LA, because it was like that was in like the Magic Johnson era Lakers when they were like winning every other goddamn year. And Roger Sterling was looking at this dude and he was like, fuck this shit. LA is supposed to be my town. I'm supposed to be the beloved guy in LA. So he bought the Clippers, who were down in Sacramento at the time, I think.
Really?
And then moved them up to LA in like the middle of the night, like full on Baltimore Ravens style, to try to make himself the next like cool owner in NBA, but then didn't give a shit because to him it was a status symbol thing.
Wow. Hearts and minds, am I right?
Jesus. Yeah, I listened to like a 10-part podcast about this shit. It was fascinating. Yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, Roger Sterling, terrible guy. was the takeaway. Terrible guy.
That is one of the few things that is universally not up for debate in sports. Real piece of shit.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all for debate.
It's one of those rare times where, sports fans who, are notorious for never being able to agree on anything everyone universally was like, yeah, okay, no, we need to get rid of this guy. This is bad for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone is just getting fucked over by this guy.
But anyway, bringing it back to the point, if you can't spend between 75 and $100 million on a team, that either means that you're one, just not running the team well enough, or two, you just ain't fucking rich enough to own a fucking team. I
Right.
mean, like,
Like,
everyone saw what the Yankees margin between payroll and revenue was when George Steinbrenner ran the team pre-salary tax in the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, the difference between revenue and payroll was slim, my friend. And no one's saying you got to do that, but at the same time, I'm just hard pressed to think of a good solid reason why you can't shell out a fraction of a percent. Oh, not that little, but some amount below what the standard average of quantity of dollars for a team is. Right now, the average amount of money spent on the 2021 roster is $118 million. And there's no reason you can't get to, I don't know, 80% of that.
right. And like, just to bring it back to another real world example, if you were, looking at, you know, buying a car the way some people look at buying a business, if you can't afford $1,000 a month in payments, you probably shouldn't be buying a Tesla. You should be buying, a Honda or a Toyota, where it's like $300-$400 a month. It's If you can't afford to run the team, you can't afford to buy the team. Just because you have enough money to buy something doesn't mean you can afford to buy that thing. I don't know why
Agreed.
this is, amongst many other things, I don't know why this is such a wild conversation to have, such a wild, um, you know, discussion, but here we are. I should stop being surprised by the things I'm surprised by, is what it comes down to.
Should you be?
I don't know anymore. World's a mess.
Yeah. For reference, the Rays in 2019. Any guess as to what their revenue was as a team?
Wow, I don't even know where I would begin. No, I don't know.
Give me like a guess.
Revenue for a baseball team? Um, I know it's in the millions of dollars. I'll say 50 million. No, that wouldn't make any sense for revenue. 250 million?
Much better guess. 264 million.
Whew, saved it. Holy shit. I was like, well, if payroll is this, revenue's probably not going to be less. That would not be a smart business venture in itself, in and of
Yeah.
itself.
So if you combine together their total 2019 payroll,
Mhm.
including um, their active payroll, their injured reserve money, their retained salaries, and their buried minor league salaries, their payroll that season came in at $64.2 million. So there
Wow.
was $200 million of difference between their revenue and their payroll. And again, I'm not
Huh.
saying that they got to get to like 250 million out of that 264 million. And obviously, there's other expenses in there. They're going to have to pay for the property tax on the stadium. They're going to have to pay for all the front office employees, all the benefits, the travel expenses. I know there's other expenses with running a business, but I mean, player payroll was like 25% of their overall revenue. And it seems like that should be higher.
Right. You look at any other business and how their uh, or their expense sheet breaks down. Labor is so far and away the largest of any other group. Like, it is far and away any company's biggest expense, with some exceptions. 25% is very low for most companies, especially ones where the entire product of the company happens to be those players.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee Brewers don't have, a manufacturing plant that they have to pay for. They just have that pesky little labor force of theirs.
That pesky little labor force of theirs.
So what we're saying is baseball needs to become more Marxist. Got it.
Well, I mean, MLB already owns the means of production, I guess. So they're already
Hey,
pretty much there.
we're just trying to seize it, man. That's all we're trying to do.
So, what do you think the 20? I think this is 18. I'm looking at 2018 Dodgers revenue was.
Dodgers in 2018, if the Rays were 260, 350.
$556 million.
Fuck.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Fuck.
It's a lot of money. Their payroll that year was $200 million. So,
which again, 40% significantly better, much more in line with what should be expected to a degree. But
right, and that's all
so,
we're getting at. You know what I mean? Like, if you take that 40%, here, let's make sure we're being exact about it. Just to make sure that these numbers are on the up and up here. All right. So Dodgers, I'm rounding this number a little bit. It's like, it doesn't matter. $200 million, and their revenue in 2018 was $556 million. That's call that 36%. Now the Rays revenue in 2019 was $264 million times their 36%. That'd be $95 million. That's $30 million more than they spent. And if we're talking about the other expenses that teams have to pay, like I said, with the property tax and travel expenses, LA is way more expensive.
Yeah.
LA is way more expensive than St. Petersburg, Florida. Like, it's not even close.
Now, if we extrapolated that to other teams, we can say 36%, we can round it up to 40, however we want to do it. What would that leave a team like the Pirates or a team like the Padres? Where would that leave their payroll? Because I feel like, the Pirates obviously would then be normalized, but I feel like a team like the Padres, revenue to expense ratio, I feel like they are, the way things stand now, almost overpaying in salary compared to what their revenues are. I feel like they would have an even higher percentage.
All right, let's see. All right. According to what I'm looking at here, we got $273 million of revenue.
Okay.
So $273 million of revenue for the Pittsburgh Pirates times our 36% would be $98 million in payroll.
So 3 times what they're paying now.
Yes, that's what they're paying now. Let's see what their payroll was. Actually, I think this is 2020. So let me look at, or 2019. So let's pull up the Pirates 2019 payroll. See what we're looking at here. Almost. Oh, look, they used to have players. That's funny. $72 million. Which that honestly would be God, such an upgrade. Such an upgrade from where they are right now. Because dear Lord, the Pirates, $41.7 million right now.
It's fucking
just gross.
Yeah,
it's just gross.
Really, like, think of, they're going to win 40 something games next year, right? Give or take. Think of how many they'd be able to field with a normal sized team. It's not, they're not going to be sniffing the playoffs, but God, they could.
Honestly, man, so in better. Their division,
yeah,
it wouldn't take much for them to sniff the playoffs.
Yeah. Sniff the playoffs? Yeah, sure. Make the playoffs. It would take a couple good signings, a couple good players, on good deals, but at the same time, it's so significantly closer to being a reality than what it is now. Like there is a non-zero chance that with this $70 million price floor, they could put together a winning team, a la, the way the Rays did last year. A la. Uh, Now, the way things stand now, there is an absolute 0% chance. There is a non-zero chance of them making or even sniffing the playoffs.
And I think the other part of it that gets lost, because it's not like the Pirates would have gone out and signed Anthony Rendon
Mm-hmm.
to his 9-year, $270 million contract, whatever it was. It was a lot of money.
Unless
I
they
want to say
gave
that was
all
right.
of that like $40 million, $30 million difference to Rendon, which even then, that's probably definitely not enough. But still, you get the point.
Right. And what I'm saying is that they wouldn't do that because the Pirates would still be bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they're smart enough to know that, But
Are
what
they?
I think they are. Because the other thing that I think, what I'm trying to say is that your average, quote unquote broke team
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't go do that. The Rays wouldn't go out and sign Garrett Cole.
Right.
But it might incent the Rays to hang on to guys like Blake Snell,
Mm-hmm.
and it might actually incent some teams to call up their younger players. Because the way that we think about service time manipulation right now is it's to avoid the young players getting paid, right? It's to keep an extra year of control to make sure that their salaries stay low. Well, signing extensions to younger players to buy out their ARB years would also be a cheap, affordable way for you to artificially increase your payroll to meet the minimum payroll requirement. So this might actually be a good way of teams paying younger players. And it's also a big reason of why not having a salary floor is beneficial to owners, not just for having to avoid having to have the big guys come to their team and have a quote unquote justifiable reason for doing that, but it's also so they don't have to pay their younger dudes. Well, if you do this,
Mm-hmm.
the Mariners might end up calling up their guys like Jared Kalenic or whatever, see how they are, because if they're good, it's like, all right, great. We're going to give you a 5-year, $10 million contract or a 5-year, $50 million. $50 million will probably make more sense. Those latter RBs are usually pretty expensive. A 5-year, $50 million contract, which gives us $5 million per year extra payroll to help chip away the difference between what we're spending today and what we need to be spending to meet the salary floor. It gives you cost controlled years of a player. The player is happy because he's getting more money and a little bit of security. And if
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work out in a more expeditious fashion, you can trade that player away to get some value out of him, knowing that you don't want to spend the money on him. And it might be a better way to go through some players like that.
We should talk about, I know this is a tangent here, but we should talk about Jared Kalenic after this and his recent contract offer and things like that. But absolutely, I think just
Yeah.
the flexibility teams would have, the options teams would have with how they go about constructing their teams with, an increase in, younger players, the increase in value that your farm system would have. I I think baseball as a whole would benefit exponentially compared to, the investment these teams would be making. So I am 100% all for it. Granted, I know we both of us are 100% on board with absolutely anything that has a good chance of making baseball more fair, increase the parity, increase the amount of money that is invested. But I think this would be a huge first step.
Firm agree. So let's set our imaginary floor at $85 million a year.
Okay.
So that means that we have 12 teams that would be forced to raise their payroll by some amount.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our old, what's the word I'm looking for? Total sum of payroll pre-salary floor was $3.558 billion for all 30 teams. It would then
And this would be
increase
with the
to
assumption
3
that,
point.
sorry, this would be under the assumption that teams that are above the floor would not be adjusting their payrolls at all. They would stay what they are currently.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just wanna
Everybody that
make sure.
is currently in 2021 slotted to be above. No, it's a good point. Currently slotted to be above payroll would stay there. You could argue that players would shift because teams currently below payroll threshold would sign some guys who got signed to other teams. I understand that, but let's just treat those other ones as projections with a increase in value of players kind of overall, and take it from there. But that's a good point. So anyway, $3.558 trillion, Jesus Christ, $billion. It will go up to $3.818 billion. So there'd be a $250 billion increase in payroll spread across the 30 teams, which
250
might
billion.
Sorry, million. Did I say billion? Million.
You did. I just wanted
$260 million. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Which might sound like a lot, but in reality, that is $8.7 million per team.
That's not a lot.
Now, why am I breaking it down per team? Because MLB already does have revenue sharing. And the thing that bothers me about it is that in 2018, which is the most recent year I have for it, every team received $118 million in revenue sharing. In 2018, not every team had $118 in payroll, $118 million in payroll. Now, I'm not saying every single one of those dollars is going to go towards that. Of course not. Again, I understand that businesses have other expenses outside of just personnel. Your employees are not your only expense when you run a business. That is understood. At the same time, it's kind of wild that you could receive over $100 million in what is supposed to be a competitive balance adjustment and then still spend under $80 million on players.
I feel like
which
that
is where the source of the competitiveness comes from.
Right. I feel like that is such a huge aspect of this discussion that is so criminally under discussed, because it's kind of like the I don't want to say like black sheep or whatnot, but like it's something that none of the teams really want to bring up. Basically, that some teams fund the payroll for other teams, and those teams just straight up aren't utilizing it. I think part of it goes back to the fact that, pro sports, we talk about it with the NFL all the time, less so with baseball, but is absolutely still the case, is it's a boys club. And, owners of some teams aren't going to be dragging up shit about other teams just to make that point and just to, bring that up in discussion, because that's a bad look for you and your friends. But at the same time, here we are, the rest of the fans, the rest of the people who are invested in this sport, and that's information we should be aware of, and it should be discussed when we are, here talking about payroll and here discussing about team revenues and how they're underpaying players, severely underplaying minor leaguers, things like that. Guess what? Like, you have the money to do it. I hate hearing these excuses of, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. Like, it just doesn't work. Oh, like, we're a small market team, this, that, 900 other things. The MLB, as shit as they are, have done a lot to ensure that these teams can afford to implement actual honest to God rosters and can pay their players. It's just at this point where the narrative is not quite there yet for some godforsaken reason. We're just sitting here shaking our heads, just in agreement, and it's just like, how else can we say it?
I've got another thing to work us through real quick that will just have us shaking our heads further. You ready?
Yeah.
So another idea that I had would be, what if the MLB rolled up minor league pay into payroll? So that way, every payroll as a whole would look a lot bigger and would be a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But that way, teams could also spend money increasing minor leaguer wages and have that additional money be represented in team payroll so that they could hit their floor commitment in a different way. And so let me work you through a little bit of the math on that, because it was actually kind of interesting and very, very sad. So, as it stands right now, I was trying to dig into how many affiliated minor leaguers we have in baseball today. And the only thing I could find from Baseball America was in 2018, which was before the culling of the minor leagues. As we lost about 40 teams this past offseason. But this bigger number, I think, works pretty effectively to illustrate the point. So while this number is certain to be smaller now, because, again, of the fewer teams, we can still take this as being the standard, because this would have been the standard before this year and hopefully becomes the standard once again. So throughout all the various levels, pretty much each team has about 5 to 7 minor league affiliates. And amongst all those rosters, which share rosters with other teams within the rosters, because, again, you may be on the Yankees 40-man roster, but you're not on the Yankees. You're on the Trenton Thunder. Oh, I guess not the Trenton Thunder anymore. The Somerset Patriots or the yeah.
I'm excited
Shout
about
outs
that. By the way,
to
just
my hometown minor league team. Me too. So excited for it. It is Corwin and my hometown minor league team. So throughout all of the affiliated ball clubs in 2018, there was about 275 minor league players per team, which meant altogether in affiliated minor league ball across 30 teams, you had 8,250 ball players. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also in 2018, there was a pay increase for minor leaguers in which they were allowed to make $2,800 per month.
Allowed.
Let's call it what it is.
Yeah. No.
Additionally, now that's not $2,800 a month for every month of the year, because baseball is a seasonal employment opportunity. So I figured minor league ball typically takes place in a shortened season. It's not as long as regular season baseball is. So I have it in there for about 6 months, which would get you through April, May, June, July, August, and September, which is usually when the minor league playoffs are and end, so that they don't interfere with World Series playoffs.
Naturally.
So that means that per player, with your $2,800 per month, you were making $16,800 per year.
About half what the new minimum wage would be.
Yeah, it is slightly higher than the federal minimum wage of $7.25, and would be, as Corwin just said, less than half, or about half, of what the new proposed $15 minimum wage would be, which is really, really sad.
Disgusting.
Yep. So if you took that $16,800 and multiply that by all of the minor league players you have in affiliated ball, that's $138.6 million, or per team, $4,620,000, or one mediocre bench guy, one Brett Gardner.
Yeah. Oh boy, it's so much fun, isn't it, Josh? Just breaking down these numbers and really getting the full picture of how fucking gross it all is.
Oh, it's miserable. It is miserable. So, let's say. So let's hop back a little bit.
Okay.
The difference between total MLB payroll in the non-salary floored version and the salary floored version was $260 million. if you take that and just divvy that up per team, since you kind of expect with the revenue sharing, some of that money to come from other teams and some of that to the more or the lesser advantage teams, and then some of that money coming from the lesser advantage teams themselves. That's $8.6 million per team. Again, right?
Not a
It's
lot.
it's really not much of a difference broken out like that. So if we took that additional pay per team and we broke that up into each player, so we took that $8.6 million and we divided it by the number of players that we have in each minor league team. Again, it's $8.6 million per team, 275 minor leaguers per team. That's $31,000 per player, which if you combine that with the $16,000 that they're already making, means that each minor leaguer would now be getting paid per year $48,000, $48,284.51.
Which is
What
entry level for
triple
some
how much money
teachers,
they're
but
making right now.
my goodness, such a huge increase. And based off of, the timing of how the season breaks down, a completely plausible way for major leaguers to make a living playing baseball, which is by all means the goal of everything we're doing here.
Right. No one on $48,000 a year is dining out every night. But also, depending on where you live in the United States and your situation and familially and your expenditures, no one on $48,000 a year is having to buy peanut butter in bulk. No one has a single with no other expenses 19 to 21-year-old is having to buy peanut butter in bulk and white bread in bulk, and those are the only foods you eat for the entire year because that's all you can afford.
Right.
Obviously,
Nobody's
that's a
sleeping
generalization.
dingy fucking bunk beds, 8 guy room just to get by when you make enough to rent a, by all means, basic apartment, which again should not be too much to ask.
No, I mean, you might get some MLB, some minor league ball players who could actually afford to like split rent with 2 or 3 roommates, um, fellow ball player roommates at a joint instead of being sponsored by people in the community like a lot of minor league ball players are today. A lot of minor league ball players that get paid for real, $16,000 a year, unless they work any side gigs, oftentimes get put up in spare rooms in people's houses, like they're foreign exchange students.
Right.
Like it's ridiculous.
And something that has been a topic of discussion that we've had in the past that I don't know if we've talked about much lately. What I really truly don't understand from a baseball, hey, we're trying to put the best product we can on the field as, a team, why teams wouldn't want to pay minor leaguers more so they could afford to, afford a gym membership, can afford to eat enough food, afford all of the basic necessities that would allow their bodies and themselves and their minds even to perform at a higher level and build up, and become better athletes at the same time. You know, living off of the bare necessities, the basic caloric intake you need in a day to physically not die doesn't exactly, equate to the best possible professional athlete you can get. I don't understand why teams wouldn't understand that a incremental increase at that level wouldn't just equate to an exponential increase in performance and, quality of their prospects throughout their minor league careers. We just talked about last week how Fernando Tatis, traded in a full percentage point at the very least of his entire professional contract in order to get a little bit money on the front end of his career so that he could afford to, work out with a trainer, be able to work out, at a real facility, be able to invest in himself and those around him so he could be a better NFL player. I don't understand why MLB as a whole can't look at that and understand, hey, if we did this for all of our players, we would have a major competitive advantage against the teams that aren't, both in, the physical on-field products, the, health, safety, and performance of our players, and the fact that I guarantee a lot more people would be willing to sign, minor league entry-level contracts with that team if they know they're going to be taken care of and don't have to worry about the bullshit that regular, minor league baseball players have to deal with. Uh, it's crazy how, teams with this much money invested in them cannot look at those, investment opportunities and, long-term investments and see the benefit that it would bring.
And that's why I think doing something like rolling up minor league pay into overall payroll, and letting it be something that can affect the salary floor might be a good way to incent teams to actually spend more on them. Because if I'm the Pirates and if I'm any team and I think I'm going to be bad, and because I'm going to be bad, I don't want to go get a big free agent who's going to end up being unhappy here because we're going to be bad because I just don't have the money to sign free agents for every position because nobody has that kind of money.
Right.
Like I'm going to be bad this year. I know it. It's unfortunate, but it's going to happen. I mean, all shoulders here. But it gives them a different avenue to put a little bit of extra money into to help avoid that salary floor and make it part of the business decision to treat my players better, in addition to just the moral decision. Now, obviously, like you just said, the business decision is also there because there have been numerous studies about the return on investment that comes with basic fucking human needs being met, like ability to get a good night's sleep, being well fed, an athlete who eats, who to thunk it. But it also, like as desperately as teams avoid the salary tax on the upper end, it might not be as desperate of a want to avoid it on the lower end, but we still would likely see some teams dishing out some additional cash to avoid having to face repercussions. If I'm the Rays and I get by on the draft, even at mid to lower level picks, because I'm always at least kind of good, and that's my strategy, and I want to hang on to that strategy, I might start spending more money to maintain at least that part of my strategy.
To another extent, if you're a team like the Pirates where, you're going to be bad for a long time, you see that you're quote unquote investing, as much as the Pirates, can argue they're investing in something. If you look at, how their team's constructed, if you say, hey, we can't really, afford to bring in any free agents right now. Well, what if instead we, let's say, take all of the money we would invest in a free agent to reach that floor? What if we instead invest that on signing prospects, international prospects, drafting guys that may not want to sign with us, but we just spend a whole ton of our money on whatever, however the draft breakdown works with, the purse that you're allowed to sign prospects with. Regardless, spending money on younger guys in these minor leaguers. So say, hey, we can't do anything with, a big name Anthony Rendon free agent now. If we invest in them for younger guys that are going to come up in 5-10 years and be in their primes then, that'll give us an advantage when we are ready to compete. We can't spend our money now, but we can invest it for players in the future. I don't see why anyone could look at that and say, oh shit, that's just the Pirates being the Pirates, trying to avoid spending money on, building their team up, don't want to be competitive now. It's like, well, now we're sitting here with an honest to God plan for implementing this, and you can't really argue against it in the way that it's universally argued against now with how this is being constructed.
Right. And it's a similar situation, like, say you're the Arizona Diamondbacks. We're not going to be better than the Padres or the Dodgers for the foreseeable future. And that makes spending money on free agents kind of hard, because could we still get that second wild card spot? Theoretically, yeah. But maybe we're not sure if we need to commit to that now, or if we're a couple more seasons away from that. Well, I can dump my money into my minor league system,
Hmm.
and that way I can either uh, get some prospects to um, help the team win in the near future. And if not, I can trade them away to acquire the talent I'm looking for, which would artificially lower payroll by trading them away and then replacing them with guys who were cheaper in your farm system.
Right.
Or once that's done, I can start going out and actually buying some free agents, signing some big name dudes in a couple of more seasons once I figure out kind of where I am situationally, or just bide my time. Like it works out well for both ends of it. Which of course means it's never going to happen. Like
Absolutely.
that's the frustrating thing is it's we could sit here and come up with a couple criticisms for like hockey or basketball or football, and there's a decent chance like everyone railing on the NFL for concussions, rightfully so. And the NFL is like looking at different types of helmets and has released training videos to teams about how to better tackle to avoid head injury, and has
Right.
instituted rule changes to avoid head-to-head contact. And while all this stuff, you know, it can only do so much on its own, it's at least direct action that the league can take. The NHL, one of their biggest complaints is the offsides rule. Like why isn't there a big vertical line? And last I heard, the NHL was trying to look into a way to make that feasible. Because the idea is like if you have your right skate over the line into your offensive territory, and you have your left skate in the defensive territory, but it's like up off the ice, and like technically you're offsides, and it's bullshit. It's stupid. Which is why there should be a vertical.
I thought you were still talking about the NFL, and was like, at first I was like, is that something people have been concerned about? And I was like, yeah, I guess offsides gets called a lot, and it's not always clear, but like I didn't know it was like a big issue. But no, the NHL makes significantly more sense.
Yeah, yeah. So but with baseball, it's like and Corwin and I are excited. We're going to have a rule change draft in this upcoming episode on Thursday with Emily Nyman of the Breaking Balls podcast. We're really looking forward to some of those fun rule changes and
Such a
seeing which
fun
version of our
name
MLB
too.
comes out the best.
Breaking
Breaking
Balls.
Balls or
Yeah.
Emily Nyman.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good name. But it seems like all the rule changes MLB gives us are rule changes that nobody is wanting.
Hmm.
The only rule change I've ever heard from the MLB that I actually kind of agreed with was the pitch clock. Everything else that they come out with is shit where it's like, who came up with this? What problem is this solving that anybody had?
Wait, we're gonna have
So
to start extra inning games with a guy on second base to speed them up. It's like how many like serious long like how many games that go into extra innings go into 12, 13, 14 innings where it's a major issue, like 5 a year, 6 a year. Like this is the rule that we're gonna put all of our chips in this season, really?
even then,
This
just be like, if they said we're starting a extra inning games with the runner on second after the 12th inning, I'd go, all right.
Sure, like
12th inning
yeah,
seems
all
kind of
right.
late. Yeah.
I love games that go to like 20 innings. Like those are always super fun and unique. But sure, I get that nobody wants to play a 4-hour baseball game. The strain it puts on players. Yeah, okay, there's a certain injury risk there that we could be limiting.
Bullpen decimation.
Right, like I can understand why you would want to do that, sure. But all right, I don't want to start talking about these kind of rule changes because that will be the
Yeah,
rest
no,
of
we're
our
just gonna
day.
work ourselves up into a whole different frenzy. Um,
I do
wow.
love how
I
we sit here and we know when we're going to work ourselves up. It's just going to be a whole mess, and then oftentimes we do it anyway.
yeah, we can predict the future and we can't prevent it from not happening. We know ourselves well enough to know what we're going to do, regardless of how we feel about it.
Yeah.
Um, last point and topic that to kind of fit into this before we go, because I'm actually surprised we spent the full hour talking about this. I told Corwin that
Holy
what I
shit!
had prepared
It's
I
been
did
an
not think
hour.
was enough for an episode, and It has been over an hour. So
Holy
clearly
shit.
what I had was enough for an entire episode. In case you're new to this podcast, I have no faith in myself, and neither should you. But you wanted to loop back to Jared Kalenic
Yep.
in this whole mess. What about him specifically did you want to address to the crowd?
So what I had heard was that he was offered a 6-year, $24 million contract by the Mariners, which would allow him to start on the opening day roster, which would allow him to, come up in the major leagues, avoid, arbitration in the coming years, avoid the minor leagues this year, basically start his MLB career, but he would still have, a 6-year contract, $8 million a year if he lives up to the hype that he has now as, I'd say top 3 prospect in baseball right now, top 5 at the very least. He could be underpaid for a couple years, and he turned the contract down, saying he would want to bet on himself. He wanted to, go through arbitration, go through and see if he could earn a better contract, make more money that way. And I just wanted to talk about, what were your thoughts on the matter, what you would have done in this situation, whether or not you think that would be a financially prudent move looking ahead.
The 6-year, $24 million contract?
Yes. Whether or not he should have taken it,
No.
whether or not you would have taken it, what your thoughts are in the matter.
$4 million a year?
$8 million a year?
No.
Is it 4?
Absolutely. Like 6 years, $24 million?
$24 million. Yeah, okay. I'm real bad at math, guys. I don't know if you know this.
Like, look, I brought up the Aaron Judge thing last week or last episode when we were looking at the Tatis contract and trying to figure out how much he was losing theoretically if he had gone through his ARB years and then sought a contract afterwards by looking at the Aaron Judge stuff. And the 2 most recent seasons of Aaron Judge's contract, he's gonna be making a little over $10 million this year and a little bit over $8 million last year, if I recall correctly. Last year being prorated and blah blah blah. That's $18 million in 2 years. He's not saving. He's just losing money doing that. He's going to be getting some on the front end, but what he would make in arbitration, and combined with what he'd be able to make after he actually, he's not with Tatis, $24 million AAV.
Mm-hmm.
Could he be getting more than that
going into his 3rd season?
No, I mean, after if he had gone through arbitration and was going to potentially hit the open market, could he have gotten to 30, 35? Sure. The difference between $24 million and $30 million, fuck, man, that's a lot of money. It might be worth giving up for that little bit extra security. We're talking about for Jared Kalenic, the difference between $4 million and anywhere between $16 and $25 million. He'd be losing so much money for an organization that is perfectly willing to fuck him to save a little bit, as was stated by Kevin Mather.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be making some extra cash on up front. The minimum salary for the MLB is like $600,000. So for those first 2 seasons, he'd be making, like 5 or 6, 7 times that. Nah, probably 6. The minimum salary is probably going to go up a little bit. 6 times that.
Wow.
But I mean, he's just losing money on the back end by a lot, by like a decent amount. It's just not to his benefit.
So apparently, according to Jerry DiPoto, the contract offer itself did not come with the stipulation that he would be guaranteed a spot on the 40-man roster. So they would still fuck with his service time. Well, I guess the service time wouldn't matter if he signed a new contract. I don't understand how people are upset that this is an issue. Like I really don't understand this.
Wow.
This is insanity.
That's fucking nuts.
I hate that this is a discussion. And now the
Oh
Mariners are
man,
coming
that's
back. It's like,
fucking
oh, it
pathetic.
was communicated that if he signed this contract, he would have debuted last year, things like that. Oof.
But like that's still not a good response because what you're saying is like either he played ball with us or he wasn't going to play ball with us, and it's like that shouldn't be right. That shouldn't be how it's allowed to work. Like that's just openly saying we're committing um uh fucking service time manipulation in slightly different words, and it's still a terrible look. Either he signs our contract or we're fucking with his money, fucking with the service time, fucking with his
And
career. It's still not right.
see, I was smart. I muted myself before I ripped this mic out of my shirt this time. Um, I mean, look at what the White Sox did with Jimenez and Robert, or Robert. I forget the actual pronunciation that we always got wrong last
Robert,
year.
I think you're right.
Before either one of them debuted, which Jared Kelenic has not yet done, they were given contracts of 6 years, $43 million for Jimenez, and Robert signed a 6-year, $50 million contract before either of them debuted, both of which were, on equal footing with Kelenic as prospects. It's just one of those things where we're sitting here. I don't think either of us have come up with a single reason for why this would be a smart decision to sign this contract, why would be considered a fair contract signing. But yet here we are, still having to debate it.
Oh, there is no debate. There's only greed, my friend. Down with the system,
Baseball.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else before we get out of here, I guess?
Bourgeoisie. Yeah, we have 5 other topics here to discuss, so let's get started.
do.
We'll make this a 2.5-hour podcast.
Yeah, it's not happening.
No, I am
not
set.
today. All right. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at JuicingPod. If you want to hit us up via email, you can do so at juicingnumbers@gmail.com. Next episode, Thursday episode, again, we have Emily Nyman from Breaking Balls podcast on. Check it out. It's going to be fun. We're really excited about it. But until then, y'all have a good one.
Bye.